Well, John. Called upon by the vice president, I straightened my back. How far have you gone with my daughter? What? How far? Gone, what? The VP's face is smiling. How far in what sense? Trying to keep the conversation going despite being flustered, he dropped another bombshell. How about you marry my daughter? Taken aback by the sudden proposal, I was nearly jumping out of my seat. My name is John. I am 28 years old. Ever since I was a kid, I loved watching factories. After graduating from an engineering college, I started my job designing pipelines at a company I joined straight out of school. I've heard that when you turn your hobby into a job, you start hating it, but I love what I do. As I was busy with my work in the morning, my manager called me over. What's up? Not having many chances to chat with the manager, I felt a bit tense. We're having a woman transferred to our department soon. Oh? I'd like you to be her mentor. At the sudden offer, my eyes went wide. Me, overlooking all my senior colleagues, and moreover, wouldn't it be better if a female employee trained her? It was a natural thing to say. But the manager in a fluster said, a female. Oh no, what if it causes trouble? Confused by what he meant, the manager lowered his voice. Actually, the woman transferring is the VP's daughter. Oh? Not understanding what that meant, the manager seemed annoyed. The VP's daughter is joining the company because of her connections. There could be jealousy or other issues if she's trained by another woman. I think of the female colleagues I know. I believe that's an unfounded fear. They're all good people. You see everyone as good, don't you? I've never seen you get mad or frustrated. Well, true, I might be a laid-back type. People would often tell me that. I've never been good at confrontations. I'd rather focus on something. But I didn't expect the manager to see me as gentle. Apparently, she wasn't doing well in the admin department. Not doing well in what way? I waited, and the manager began to speak. I don't know the specifics, but it seems she had difficulty in their department. They say she's not very amiable, though that could just be jealousy talking. Wait, she was in administration, and now she's being transferred to our pipeline design department. When I asked, does she have some experience with the software, the manager made a face. She's from a liberal arts background, but she's academically bright, so with some training, she'll likely grasp it even if it's not her field. For now, let her assist you, like copying the designs you've made. Essentially, train her as an assistant. It sounds complicated, but having someone to help with copying would lighten the load. I'm not sure if I'm cut out for training, but I guess I can manage this much. Just as I was feeling a bit optimistic, the manager, as if sensing my thoughts, warned me. Listen, make sure there are no blunders. She's the VP's daughter, understand? Blunders. How bad does it have to be considered a blunder? My budding optimism began to wilt. While I was preparing training materials during a break, the woman in question arrived. She was stunningly beautiful, but she had a somewhat frosty aura. My name is Jessica. Nice to meet you. Her voice was so faint that I had to strain to hear. The manager responded to Jessica with a smile. This is John. He will be teaching you. He's a very mild-mannered guy, so don't hesitate to ask him anything. Hey, John. Taken aback by the sudden shout, I looked at the manager. His eyes seemed to say, you know what's at stake. No mistakes. I still wasn't sure what constituted a mistake. For starters, I booted up the software. I began to explain, hoping she would pick it up. But, do you need to take notes? I asked. Jessica didn't take any notes. Being someone who can't remember without taking notes, I asked out of concern if she was okay. In response, I received a soft, I'm fine, accompanied by a stern look. There was a noticeable furrow in her brow. Feeling apprehensive, I dropped the topic and asked her to draw a bit, but she couldn't draw anything at all. When I mentioned taking notes again, she reluctantly pulled out her notebook and started jotting things down, hunching over her desk. This scene, it felt familiar. My stomach began to ache. "I need to use the restroom," I said, leaving my seat. The atmosphere felt so heavy. As I was about to return to my desk, I overheard a conversation. "Did you hear? The girl who got in because of the VP's connections." "Yeah, I've heard. They say she's super gorgeous. But she apparently couldn't handle her job in admin. Being the VP's daughter, however cute, must be a tough gig." Is this the jealousy the manager mentioned? All they were doing was gossiping without touching on her character. Sure, Jessica might have connections, but her alma mater is a renowned university known for guaranteed placements. The VP probably believed his daughter would benefit the company. Despite the tense atmosphere, she doesn't seem like a bad person. I murmured to myself and decided to head back. "Sorry for the wait. Where did we leave off?" I said, looking at the screen, and was surprised. The drawings, which she had struggled with earlier, were now complete up to the point I had taught. Seeing her still looking down, I recalled something. "Just give me a moment," I said, and went to fetch some helpful resources. I brought back several illustrated books that explained the software's usage. And I laid out some simple practice designs on Jessica's desk. She stared intently at the materials. "I've got work too, you know, but I think you should be able to draw this diagram with what I've shown you. If you're unsure, you can ask me or refer to those books. Can you give it a try?" With that said, I returned to my seat next to Jessica. I positioned my keyboard so that I was half turned away from her, making it so she couldn't see my screen. Noticing this, the manager hurried over to me. "What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be training her?" "All is good," I simply replied, urging the manager to back off. From behind me, I could hear the determined sounds of Jessica operating the computer. It brought a slight smile to my face. An hour later, she presented a finished diagram. It took a while, but it was neatly done. There were a few sections that seemed off. Probably, she had tried fixing them manually. I showed her a feature that would have made it simpler, and I sensed her surprise. Essentially, she's just shy. Back in college, I tutored kids, and one of them was extremely shy. Such kids don't perform well when observed. They feel pressured under scrutiny. After understanding this, when she worked on problems, I did my own studies. Her grades improved significantly, and her parents treated me to a nice restaurant as a bonus. From then on, I would give Jessica some instructions and then focus on my own work, but she was incredibly talented. She absorbed everything I taught her like a sponge. The passion I had during my tutoring days was reignited, and I ended up teaching her so zealously that my manager scolded me, saying, "Hey, it's 5 p.m. now. Do you intend to make the boss's daughter work overtime?" From then on, I started to engage in small talk with her. Even during a 10-minute break, Jessica wouldn't leave her seat, so I'd buy her a drink and hand it to her. I'd also make a bit of small talk with her. "I've got 3 sisters. You know mornings are like a battlefield," I said, and her face lit up a bit. Getting carried away, I suggested, "Why don't you sit up a bit straighter? It'll be easier to see the computer screen." But she gave me a glare. Yet, remembering I was her instructor, she hesitantly straightened up. I couldn't help but admire her upright posture, but she quickly slouched again. Her face turned bright red, and she looked down shyly. I looked around and noticed our co-workers staring. "Sorry for drawing attention to you." When I said that, she kept her head down and shook her head side to side. I hate it when people stare at my large boobs. Oh, I can imagine how uncomfortable that must be. Jessica turned a surprised look on her face. She didn't expect my response. I mentioned earlier that I have 3 sisters, right? Ha, you know what? Maybe one of them can help you. I pulled out my phone and searched for a particular store. This is where my sister works. I mean, I can contact her directly, but look, you can chat with the store for advice. My sister works at a lingerie store. At home, she sometimes shows me her new purchases and asks for my opinion. I really wish she wouldn't. My sister often complains about shoulder pain too. She knows a lot about clothes and such. Maybe you should ask her. After my non-stop chatter, I suddenly snapped back to reality. Did I possibly creep her out by discussing a lingerie store? I'm so sorry for suddenly talking about this. In my flustered attempt to smooth things over, she still kept her head down as always, but managed to say, "Thank you," with a shy and strained voice. Her tone didn't sound upset, which relieved me. Our 10-minute break ended, and we were back to work. Even though we got a bit closer, it seemed like she still felt nervous when we worked closely together, so I kept a reasonable distance as always. Once Jessica got the hang of the graphic software, I decided to delegate some tasks to her. While I didn't expect her to handle everything immediately, especially the specialized parts, I judged that she's the kind who learns best through hands-on experience. The drawing she finished was quite accurate for a first attempt. "You did an amazing job. This is great." She seemed pleased, even as she looked down, by my genuine admiration. "Just here and here. It's partly my fault for not explaining well, but the sizes are different from this point," I pointed out, and she had a sudden realization, her face lighting up with an "oh" expression. Her ability to catch on with just that little feedback spoke volumes of her excellence. I handed her the document with the areas marked in red for her to correct. Suddenly, the manager called out, "Hey, John, come over here," and ushered me into another room. "Did you need me?" I asked as I entered the room, where the manager had his back to me. He whipped around with wide eyes. "What are you so relaxed about? Do you even know who she is? She's the VP's daughter." He loomed over me, his voice raised. "Did I do something wrong?" I replied, genuinely puzzled, prompting a heavy sigh from him. "You really don't get it. You should be more considerate." Pointing out mistakes to the VP's daughter, I was confused. "But as a trainer, it's my duty." He cut me off. "You could have corrected it subtly. What if the VP gets wind of this?" He sighed heavily at my continued disbelief. "Look, if Jessica even hints to the VP about having an incompetent employee, you're toast. Fired." That seemed so extreme, but he pressed on. "Didn't you have her serve coffee the other day?" "Yes, I remember you rushing to stop her." Jessica seemed puzzled by it. Jessica had mentioned she wanted to mingle a bit with others, and given we had some treats, I had asked her to serve coffee. "You shouldn't make the VP's daughter do such chores. If we keep treating her like she's made of glass, she'll never fit in," I thought to myself, feeling the manager's glare. "The VP expects regular updates on her training. I've said she's excellent, so you need to step up the training pace. Just handing her reading materials and leaving her be is unacceptable. Brace yourself for the worst." With that, he sent me away. I might actually lose my job. While I believed I was training her correctly, I might not have given enough thought to her being the VP's daughter. Was I wrong to think everyone should be treated equally? When I returned to my desk, Jessica promptly handed me the corrected diagram. It was nearly perfect, but I noticed one small oversight. As I was about to point it out, the image of my manager's stern face crossed my mind. Yes, perfect, as expected. Now that this is done, let's move on to this one." As I was looking for another task, Jessica asked me, "Is this part correct?" I'm a bit unsure. The part she pointed out was the only section that had been overlooked. But, having just praised her for perfection, I couldn't find the right words. Yes, this will do for now. I'll take a closer look later, and if there's any issue, I'll let you know." Trying to smooth things over, Jessica looked at me seriously. Why did you suddenly switch to formal language? I was taken aback. Without realizing, I had started speaking to Jessica more formally after the manager's comment. Stammering, I noticed Jessica looking down. She took the blueprint from my hand, saying, "It's fine, I'll work on this," and turned away. Was that the right response? However, the vice president is currently on an overseas business trip. Before he returns from abroad, I need to reconsider my mentoring approach and change my attitude towards Jessica. This realization made things a bit awkward, and the friendly atmosphere we had seemed to have reset. A few days later, the vice president returned from his overseas trip, and I was summoned. Calling you immediately upon his return, I think you really might be in trouble. I reported the situation as neutrally as possible. The manager looked at me with concern. Before I could be officially reprimanded, I went to Jessica. "Jessica, I'm sorry, I was probably too familiar with you, wasn't I?" As I said that, Jessica looked at me with a surprised expression. I've rarely seen Jessica's face lift up from its usual downward gaze. "She's really beautiful," I thought as I couldn't help but stare. "What do you mean?" I found it hard to give a direct answer. "It's nothing. I've been called in. Can you finish up this blueprint?" Handing her the blueprint, I heard the manager's voice echoing across the department. "Hey, John, let's go." I felt as if Jessica was watching me as I determinedly headed towards the manager. I knocked and entered the vice president's room. There was a man standing there, well-dressed and well-postured. "Sorry to call you in. Please, take a seat." Urged, I sat down on the lavish leather sofa. I felt uneasy. "So, how's Jessica? She originally studied liberal arts, so this is a bit out of her field. Do you think she can handle it?" The VP's calm voice resonates throughout the room. My knees shook from the nervousness. "Yes, sir, she is a very talented girl. I have very little to teach her." Mid-sentence, the vice president grunted. Even so, she doesn't seem to be making an impact yet." I broke out in a cold sweat. "No, that's not it. John is slow. He just couldn't keep up with her pace." The manager quickly jumped in to defend me. "I'm so sorry. Having her serve coffee, in this day and age, it's quite backward, right? Haha." The vice president remained silent. The increasingly uneasy manager continued. "It's not like John had any ill intentions. He's just a bit carefree at times." The vice president gestured for him to stop. "I want to hear from John. Tell me, how do you find my daughter?" Swallowing hard, I tried to respond when he added, "Can you be honest? I'm not trying to trap you or anything." Maybe those words put me at ease. I found myself talking without even thinking. "She's very genuine. She seemed pretty shy, and when I constantly taught her, she seemed tense. So, I gave her some books and encouraged her to learn on her own. Still, she understood well. I might need a little more time since I didn't directly guide her, but I believe she'll handle her tasks efficiently." The manager was about to interject, but the vice president silenced him with a glance. "Did she manage to serve coffee properly?" The vice president's calm voice made it hard to tell if he was angry. I decided to answer honestly. I thought it might help her bond with everyone in the department, but I realized it was thoughtless. The vice president seemed to smile subtly at my remorse. "Well, understood. You both may leave." As we were about to leave, the manager rushed in. "I'm sorry, John's still green as a professional." Perhaps he thought I was about to be fired. But the vice president chuckled. "I never asked for special treatment for my daughter. I hope you'll guide her strictly." The manager's eyes widened at those words. "John, how about dinner tonight? Nothing formal, just want to have a little chat." I accepted the invitation I couldn't refuse, feeling pretty nervous. They'd chosen a fancy restaurant. Adding to the ambience, there's the vice president right in front of me. And Jessica is also sitting there. It's pretty formal here. Well, John. I straightened my back when the vice president addressed me. How far have you gone with my daughter? What? How far? Gone? What do you mean? The vice president has a smirk on his face. What does he mean by how far? Seeing me in a state of panic, the vice president chuckles. I'm talking about work. What did you think I was talking about? Seeing the vice president laughing like that, my face turned beet red. Dad, stop teasing him like that, Jessica interrupted. Oh, it's about work. Didn't I just explain that to him? Well, I'd love to hear how far you two have gone personally, too. Hey, what are you saying? I've never seen Jessica react this way before. She seems more relaxed around her family, and even in this weird situation, I can't help but feel comforted by it. Why not? John is a good man, right? At that remark, I widened my eyes in surprise, and Jessica looked shocked. Stop it. Seems like you understood my daughter's shyness. She had a hard time in the admin department. I felt that it wouldn't do for her to be like that forever. Maybe I made a mistake by suddenly putting her in admin department. Sorry for causing trouble. Ignoring his daughter's protests, he continues talking to me. At the mention of causing trouble in admin department, Jessica lowered her head. In admin department, you have to deal with a lot of people. I get a little nervous when I take in documents for certification. I'm not great with social interactions either. Just like I heard, John, you're such a kind person, always having Jessica's back. Jessica didn't retort anymore. She hung her head as if waiting for the storm to pass. I'd feel relieved if such an understanding man was by my daughter's side. John, would you marry my daughter? Taken aback by the sudden proposal, I was about to jump, but Jessica's sharp enough of this nonsense brought me back to reality. Yeah, right. But I heard at the company that you might be getting laid off, that you were scared. Trying to change the topic, Jessica interjected. Where did you hear that? I responded in a flustered tone. Jessica muttered, from my seniors. Then the vice president said, I did something bad. The manager is a good guy, but he's a bit old-fashioned. He thinks all of the relatives of higher positions are superior. Sighing deeply, he grumbled. Don't worry, it won't come to you getting fired. Please continue looking after my daughter. I bowed deeply in response, just as the vice president's cell phone rang. Excuse me for a moment, he said, and left the table. Now, it was just the two of us. Things were a bit awkward after that conversation. I took a sip of my beer. I'm glad it was all just a misunderstanding. You were acting strange towards me, so that's what it was. Slightly pouting, she sipped her wine. I'm sorry, I get scolded by the manager. I bowed my head deeply. Because I've always been misunderstood, being known as the vice president's daughter or for being shy, I felt a bit sad thinking here we go again. Hearing that, I bowed even deeper. My head was nearly touching the table. Well, the misunderstanding's cleared up now. Let's continue to get along. When I looked up, Jessica, with a slightly dazed expression, was gazing at me. All of it was a misunderstanding. Huh? What does she mean? My dad's take her comment might not have been a misunderstanding. Hearing her mumble those words, my heart almost leapt out of my chest. No, but I'm such an ordinary, unreliable guy. Surely, I'd only be a burden to someone like you, right? I felt dizzy. And I've only had a few sips of beer. I've imagined our married life. You'd probably be a great dad. Of course, I will. If I marry Jessica, I'll be the best dad, the best husband. Unable to voice those inner thoughts, Jessica, with tears in her eyes, said, Sorry for getting a bit carried away with the drinks. I must be bothering you. But you noticing my shyness and not judging me for my chest complex, it's all a first for me, and it made me happy. My rationale went out the window. If you're okay with someone like me, I want to be by your side forever. In a somewhat fancy restaurant, My declaration echoed through the quiet hall, making the spotlight shine Jessica quite embarrassed. After a moment of silence, Jessica's phone vibrated. A notification from the vice president read, "Take your time, you too." 3 months have passed since Jessica and I started dating. Today was our long-awaited shopping date. "This lingerie is super comfortable," Jessica exclaimed. I unintentionally glanced at her cleavage. Noticing my gaze, she shot me a glare. "Where are you looking?" She was the one who brought it up, but I quickly apologized, saying, "Sorry." My sister, who had previously consulted with Jessica at her shop, became good friends with her and brought her in as a loyal customer. It seems Jessica picked out a few items that she was quite satisfied with. For some reason, the entire bill was sent to me, but I happily paid. Jessica was told by my sister that it was a first-time customer discount. Suddenly, I spotted a dress in the showcase that seemed like it would suit Jessica perfectly. I took Jessica's hesitating hand and led her into the store. I discreetly asked the approaching sales associate to give us some space and suggested Jessica try on the dress. Jessica's unusual reluctance to enter the store was probably due to the sales associates approaching her. Standing guard in the middle of the fitting room area, I called out, "How is it? Do you like it?" In response, the curtain of the fitting room opened slightly, revealing Jessica's face. "Thank you," she whispered into my ear, "for keeping the sales associate away." She noticed. "Huh?" "You're welcome," I replied with a smile. Jessica said, "Come a bit closer." Doing as told, she gently kissed my cheek. "Stay with me forever," she murmured and closed the curtain. "I'll buy her a ring later. I will ask her to marry me." Imagining introducing myself to the vice president later on as her fiancé, I straightened up with determination. I wonder which ring would suit Jessica's delicate finger best.